7 years in solitary confinement can strip a man down to nothing, and apparently, so can freedom. That is the unsettling premise at the heart of Newborn, a psychological thriller that has spent years waiting in the dark itself, surviving bankruptcy, a pandemic, and one of the most complicated reputations in modern independent cinema. Now, against every odds stacked against it, it is finally stepping into the light. David Oyelowo stars as Chris Newborn, a man released from solitary confinement after 7 years behind bars. Walking back into a world that kept spinning without him, his mission is achingly simple: rebuild his life, hold his family close again, and breathe free air without flinching. What he finds instead turns that dream on its head. The walls have simply moved. Freedom, it turns out, is no sanctuary. The outside world mirrors the psychological prison he left behind, isolating, disorienting, and far more terrifying than the controlled silence of a cell. Because at least a cell has edges. The trailer makes the skin crawl in all the right ways, hinting at a film far more interested in the slow collapse of a man's interior world than in cheap shock value. Newborn will open exclusively at AMC theaters on the 10th of April 2026. The choice to go theatrical first, and specifically to partner with AMC, the largest theatrical exhibitor in the United States and the world, is not incidental. In an industry where independent films routinely vanish into streaming libraries without ceremony, this release is a deliberate act of defiance. AMC Theaters executive Nicole Denson Randolph described the project as bold, provocative, and original storytelling that comes alive on the big screen, and framed the partnership as one built around collaboration, transparency, scale, and national visibility. For filmmakers Nate Parker and David Oyelowo, this theatrical rollout is the centerpiece of a broader strategy through their joint production and distribution label, Mansa Studios, which exists precisely to build alternative pathways between storytellers and the audiences who want to sit together in the dark and feel something. The film's cast surrounds Oyelowo, with performers who know how to carry emotional weight without announcing it. Olivia Washington takes on the role of Tara. Barry Pepper, no stranger to moral complexity on screen, plays Hirsch. Jimmy Fails, whose breakout work in The Last Black Man in San Francisco proved his gift for portraying quiet yearning against urban indifference, steps into the role of Keith. The supporting ensemble includes Thomas Cadrot, Rukia Bernard, Aidan Stocks, Naomi Simpson, and Alexander Davis. For those who followed Lawmen, Bass Reeves, the Taylor Sheridan-developed Western miniseries, the reunion of Oyelowo and Pepper, in a completely different genre, carries its own understated intrigue. Two actors who already understand each other's rhythms, now navigating an entirely different kind of pressure. Nate Parker writes and directs, and his career has never been a quiet one. His 2016 debut, The Birth of a Nation, arrived at Sundance as a thunderclap, a retelling of Nat Turner's Slave Rebellion that sold for a record $17.5 million and was tracking toward the Oscars until decades-old sexual assault allegations resurfaced and collapsed everything overnight. What should have been a career-defining launch became a cautionary tale the industry moved on from quickly, leaving Parker to rebuild in the margins. American Skin followed in 2019, divisive and imperfect, but unmistakably the work of a filmmaker with something to say and no interest in softening it for an easier reception. Newborn is the next move in that long, unfinished game. Newborn was shot in 2020 under its original title, Solitary, during the COVID-19 pandemic, a period that, in retrospect, gives the film's themes an almost eerie contextual dimension. Production wrapped, and then the film went quiet. Stalled by a combination of pandemic disruption, the unforgiving economics of independent distribution, and the 2023 bankruptcy of Bronze Studios, the financier behind it. Bronze collapse sent shockwaves through the independent film world, leaving multiple finished projects stranded at various stages of the release pipeline. Newborn was among them, and for a while it looked like another casualty of an industry that had already made clear it was not especially interested in making things easy for Parker. The turnaround came through Mansa Studios, the company Parker and Oyelowo co-founded and co-lead as CEOs, which took over the film's theatrical rollout and recently closed a $12 million seed funding round to fuel its operations going forward. The round was led by Mansa Venture Capital, with investments from Windraco, Galaxy Investment Partners, Base Ventures, Rainmaker Films, Black Capital VC, K-Period Media, and Robert F. Smith. The capital signals that Mansa is not simply a vehicle for this one release, it is a long-term infrastructure play, building the kind of distribution muscle that black filmmakers have historically had to borrow from studios that came with their own set of compromises. The themes woven through Newborn resonate differently in 2026 than they might have when the film first went into production. Solitary confinement as a policy has faced growing legal and humanitarian scrutiny over the past several years, with researchers documenting its effects on cognition, emotional regulation, and the ability to reintegrate into social environments. But Parker is not making a policy documentary. He is making something more personal and more unsettling, a film about what happens to the self when the self has been deliberately dismantled by systems designed to punish rather than rehabilitate, and whether a man can be rebuilt by love and will alone when the damage runs that deep. That question, in a country still reckoning with mass incarceration on a scale unmatched anywhere in the world, lands with the weight of lived reality behind it. Oyelowo, for his part, is operating at a level of creative ambition that suggests an actor fully in command of his moment. Alongside Newborn, he is attached to a new production of Othello with Rachel Brosnahan and Cynthia Erivo, produced by Barbara Broccoli, the former steward of the James Bond franchise. He is also in active development on Heist of Benin with Ava DuVernay, the director who first helped introduce Oyelowo to mass audiences through Selma, a British Museum heist film set up at Studio Canal. The breadth of that slate, from Shakespeare to heist cinema to solitary confinement horror, reflects a performer who refuses to define himself by category and who seems to be building something deliberate and expansive with each project he chooses. Newborn carries an R rating for violent content and bloody images, though the trailer suggests the film's most potent fear is not physical. It is the sound of silence after 7 years of silence, the look on a man's face when he realizes that the freedom he counted on as salvation has its own locked doors. The title works on multiple levels. Chris Newborn, learning to exist again, as though for the first time, raw and unsteady, in a world that never slowed down to wait for him. April 10 is more than a premiere date. For Parker, it is a hard-won moment in a career that has had to fight for every inch of ground. For Oyelowo and the cast around him, it is a chance to put a finished, long-delayed piece of work in front of the audiences who have been waiting for exactly this kind of story, psychologically serious, unsparing, and unafraid to sit with discomfort instead of resolving it neatly. For Mansa Studios, it is a proof of concept, and for anyone who believes that black-led psychological cinema deserves the same theatrical respect given to any prestige drama, April 10 is a signal worth paying attention to. So here is the question worth sitting with before you walk into that theater. If a man survives 7 years of deliberate psychological destruction at the hands of the state, and then discovers that freedom is just a different kind of prison, does society owe him anything? Or does it simply move on, the way it always does? Drop your answer in the comments below, because that conversation is exactly what a film like this is built for. If this breakdown gave you something to think about, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. There is a lot more coming, and you do not want to miss it.